Welcome back to another episode of Sync Riffs. Charles from Blue Buddha checking back in with my co-host Chase Walker. How's it going, Chase?
Going good. Happy to be back, Charles.
Happy summer. Yeah, we were just catching up a second ago, and you've been busy, you've been doing some gigs, and you were in Vegas not too long ago doing some cuts for your new release.
Yeah, we had a little run planned. We went out to Utah for a little city festival gig. Stopped in Vegas on the way. Got a few clips. So yeah,
it's always nice to
places like that.
Always busy. Yeah, it's been a busy month for us also, and wanted to kind of hop back in and thread the needle for our listeners. And thanks, guys, for your support. We're seeing it in the subscriptions and likes and the comments you guys post. And we're still here on the sync side. And also recently, we'll share some news midway through the podcast, but wanted to thread the needle. We were having our second incarnation of our Sync Like a Pro Academy. And we had some listening sessions from some music supervisors in the TV and ad space. And some great nuggets as always from Jen Piken and also Susan Dolan. But Chase, if you want to thread that needle, what were some of the things to unpack about? If you want to talk about, we're talking about brand identity for an artist and for independent artists. When you write your songs, the importance of really crafting your brand identity and letting your songs speak to who you are. And if you can mirror that, Chase, you've released some new cuts, a new EP that's coming out. And what are some of your key takeaways when it comes to, because a lot of indie artists, the approach to writing songs for sync, one kind of pitfall is artists who, if you craft a song purely for sync, supervisors can tell if a song's just been written with the goal of trying to sync it. And what do you what are some takeaways that you could share there?
Yeah. So I've definitely heard, and this is something we talked about with Susan on the stream. But I've heard from several different music supervisors that they get a lot of music that to them sounds too sync-y. And it's exactly what you're talking about. Like it sounds like someone wrote it specifically to be put to picture, which in a lot of respects is not how they're trying. It's not the kind of music they're looking for. What music supervisors are looking for as far as songs from independent artists, right? Now independent producers and score music, that's a whole different realm. But as far as music from independent artists to sound like an independent artist wrote it, the whole idea is that that music fits in the context of that world and is believable that an artist in this world would write that and that people in this world would be listening to it, right? And so if it sounds like it's written specifically for picture, it's not accomplishing that realism. So one of the things we talked about in the session was, especially when it comes to writing for commercial ads for brands, this is especially true. You want to first write your songs, write your music for your own artist brand and your own artist image, whatever you would want that to be. Mm-hmm. Then, once you've accomplished that and your songs are reinforcing your own brand, then you can allow what the attributes of your brand are to marry to whatever brand you're trying to pitch for or whatever show or film you're trying to pitch for.
Yeah, because I think the key takeaway and great synopsis there, Chase, is when a brand is licensing your song, they're also attaching themselves to that either frontline artist or independent artist. And the perfect example is, if GMC Trucks or Kia Automotive, if they license a Taylor Swift track, anyone who's a Swiftie, they have that potential of that brand to capture the market segment of the Taylor Swift followers, because they're going to pay attention to the ad. And that's sort of a slam dunk for a Fortune 500 brand where, hey, let's identify who our target market is. Our demographic is an 18 to 34-year-old male and female. Where are they consuming content? Are they on TikTok or IG? And if you run a targeted ad that features their favorite artist, Taylor Swift, those fans are going to pay attention to that brand. And it's one of those alignments of the music and the brand identity, because I'm sure you can speak to this, Chase, as in your career, and seeing, it could be career suicide on the flip side of the coin as well for a brand if they align with an artist that all of a sudden has a lot of negative publicity or press that can backfire.
Yep. Well, as we saw with the Kendrick and Drake beef, Universal had to put a stop to that because they were losing millions of dollars in commercial brand partnership revenue, let alone record sales and ticket sales.
Well, you brought up a good point earlier, Chase, of the authenticity. And I think one thing that we have going for ourselves with the big elephant in the room of AI and how is it going to impact the creation of music, authentic music, and storytelling in various media, TV, film. And when we had our AAPI panel the other day, Rudy Chung from Netflix, executive on the music team, was weighing in on, at least in this early incarnation, composers using AI as a tool to create temp score with AI to at least create a template or a skeleton, if you will. And I'm curious your thoughts, Chase, because the other day, I don't know if we had done this, but we have our Patreon with producers and songwriters, and we all know, correct, Chase, like if you're sitting on a remote Zoom with a vocalist and for that first meeting, how great it is to have a scratch track that is perhaps AI generated, just to give some ideas, and versus you being able to prepare for that meeting. If you created some tracks, you broke out your guitar, the time you put into that is a sunk cost, whereas AI can create that template. Have you tried that at all with any sessions, and what are your thoughts about it?
I haven't tried any AI music generation tools. I have tried out some lyric writing AI tools, and they're definitely getting better. And without claiming to be an expert necessarily on this subject, from what I've heard about what's going on with AI and what's going on specifically with AI in the film industry, as far as music is concerned, I would think what the result of this will, at least initially, come to is that the production companies and the networks will, well, I guess the directors and the supervisors and the showrunners and all the people who are working to create these shows will get much more specific with what they're looking for, because they're able to make those temps. You know what I mean? And so it won't be quite such a wild goose chase to figure out what is right for this particular piece, right? What it seems is not happening yet is that they're not attempting to go full AI for the whole thing. Now, I think, potentially someday we could see a fully scored movie in AI. However, when it comes to sync for independent artists, right? The question of AI and AI generation based off of other people's copyright is still something that's very much up in the air right now, right? And what seems to be the consensus is that at some point we may need a change to the copyright statute that includes regenerations, right? So if your copyright is used to inform an AI to generate something new, you own part of that, whatever that creation is, right? In the same sense that you would own, if someone reproduces a CD of yours, you still own the copyright to that CD, right? And so maybe at some point that'll all get sorted out on the legislative front. But until then, I think a lot of the production companies are just going to stay away from that, because if you make anything with AI that sounds a little too much like this artist or that artist, now all of a sudden everyone's coming after you,
Yeah, great point. And then also, the can of worms, Chase, is, we've heard the term temp love pre-AI. The example is the director falls in love with the track that is temped in, and any opportunity, anything they serve up to try and replace the temp track falls short. So they end up going back and replacing the temp track. So my question is, if you temp an AI, it's score, and nothing is that a slippery slope? What's going to happen there with the director's decision making?
Right. Yeah. Well, especially when it comes to something like score, which may, draw on a breadth of material that's not under copyright, that's in the public domain. You know what I mean? And they can hit on specific specifications. But yeah. Otherwise,
that's a great. I didn't think about that. And and above all, and I'll have to find the quote and we'll post it up, but I think it was a CEO at Sony Pictures, perhaps, stating in the future, as a cost-cutting measure, to use more AI, not necessarily on the music side, but AI, with the help of AI, on the visual side. So, as we all know, the companies are creating films, music, but at the bottom line is the balance sheet, and we'll see how that dictates things. But threading that needle, because it's been a minute, Chase, and you've put out a couple EPs and singles, and wanted to share, and talk about something that a lot of independent artists don't know about. But I'll set the table, and then we'll thread it with this conversation and talk about something new that Blue Buddha is expanding in the area of, and that is administration, helping independent artists administer their catalog. So different from a publishing deal, if you have an administrator, you still own the rights to your publishing. And what an administrator does for a percentage, the administrator collects any type of revenue stream. So on the DSPs, that could be sync performance. And there's two types of revenue streams when it comes to the DSPs. One is a streaming revenue. And to recap, as we all know, and it's been debated over, but Spotify's streaming royalty is half of, it's 0.004, so basically half of 1 cent. So for every stream, that is the revenue there. And then there's the mechanical rate. So why it's so important for a download or pre-save. So anytime your track is downloaded, two revenue streams. One's the mechanical rate. The other is the stream revenue, the actual stream. And that's what an administrator does. They collect both sides. Have you had experience, Chase?
Yeah. There's quite a few. I mean, obviously, when it comes to music royalties, there are several different agencies that you need to collect from. So you need a registration with the MLC, you need a registration with Sound Exchange, and you need a registration with a performance rights organization. And those would be either ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. The last I heard, CSAC was invite only, so it's basically ASCAP or BMI here in the United States. Mm-hmm. And within each of those, there are, the PROs collect performance royalties on the publishing side, right? Sound Exchange collects royalties on the master side. And so if you aren't registered with all of these, and have the adequate either writer registration, publishing registration, and or artist registration with each of those, you may have outstanding royalty income that's being held by those entities. And so by having an administrator, it helps to basically consolidate all of those royalties down to one check, basically.
100%. And the wrinkle of with sync performance, you're publishing, collecting, that is when you have a sync that airs worldwide in 50 countries. The term we use is collecting at the source. Oftentimes we've seen it where if you have a cue sheet and it airs, you have a use that's aired in a foreign territory, there could be a typo on the cue sheet. There could be misinformation that gets conveyed to the foreign territory. And working with an administrator who has sub-publishers and contacts to, quote, collect at the source, collect at the local level. Because if not, performance income in a foreign territory, it goes into what they call the black box. And it's unaccounted for. You don't see that money. And that's why frontline artists, they'll have a publisher, they'll have an administrator to collect every penny. And even then, because I'll re-look it up, but I think the statute of limitations, on performance income, if you are outside of that window, then that money is gone. And have you, Chase, with your first record, let's just take Spotify, for example, were you able to collect everything that you think came through?
I believe so, but that's actually kind of on my to-do list of things to sort out for this upcoming EP, because I think, especially since the MLC has come around, I may have a few works that still need to be registered. So that's, need to go check up on all of that.
Yeah, and to your point, Chase, do you find with fellow indie artists and bands, because just think it's, one thing, the amount of time to create a cut, record it, then market it, put it on the DSP, register it, copyright it. Do you find most independent artists, it's not even really on their radar, or they don't have bandwidth to worry about, hey, what's happening with my streaming income?
Yeah. Well, and I think for a lot of independent artists, they, may not see huge checks coming in and think, oh, okay, well, there's not a whole lot of royalties to be had. But if, say you're getting a $50 check every other month or so, that could be a $100 check because you're not collecting the other half of your royalties.
Yeah, 100%. And, I pulled it up the other day for an artist, and I think, for the DSPs, most folks just think of, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, but there's 15 to 20, Tidal, there's Deezer, SoundCloud. And for every one of those, I would imagine, correct, Chase, the process, there's not one silver bullet. You have to register your track with the DSP for all of them manually.
Yeah, unless you're going through an administrator or a distributor, basically. And honestly, I'm not even sure, because if you're doing something like that on your own, I'm not even sure how you would prevent your track from just getting lost in the weeds with, the thousands of other tracks that get uploaded every day.
Yeah, that's a great point, because something, we were talking with the label rep the other day, and he was sharing, the benefit of, going with a distributor like Empire is, they have editorial departments within Empire who they'll, pitch your cut potentially to Spotify and editorial playlist. But I think, what's daunting is even if you go with that type of distributor, from the statistics that we see, the thousands of cuts that are released daily on the DSPs or monthly, the editorial departments are inundated, just similar with what we go through as sync agents pitching to supervisors compared to, when I started 20 plus years ago. There's no shortage of music, there's a surplus. And I think to thread the needle, and Chase, you've been on socials and IG, and you take a very balanced approach when marketing your music on IG. But to set the stage, I think, that sort of trap of the belief of frequency of, the more we post on IG, we can gain the algorithm. And shout out to Hunter George at Guild Music Supervisors. He shared something on IG that was basically saying, the hoops of what it would take, posting 7 to 8 times a day, doing a live stream. It was just bananas. And I think the 1%, it's no mistake. And tell me if you agree, Jason. We can see what your experience is, what you're seeing on social media trends. But the 1% of content that is at the uber top, and if you look at the engagement, it's because it's been boosted. It's been paid advertising.
A great portion of it, for sure. I do see. I don't know if it's just the way that I've trained my own algorithm or not, but I do from time to time see videos pop up from accounts that are not massive accounts and that are not sponsored. When it comes down to it, no one except for the people who are working at Meta or TikTok know exactly what the algorithm does, right? The biggest problem, though, that I've seen for a number of different artists that have gained a massive following on social media, but have struggled to promote their music to that following is two things. One, a lot of artists will use other kinds of content to get their page out there, right? So it might be a comedy bit, or it might be a how-to for like music mixing, or I don't know, baking a cake or something that doesn't actually have anything to do with their music. So let's say they have a video that goes viral for that, some comedy video. Then they get 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 followers. But when they go to try to post about their music, Instagram is only sending it to 2,000, maybe 10,000 people when they have 300,000 followers.
Okay.
So the big thing is like, how do you, because as music creators, no one who's a music creator wants to be a content creator. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the people who love creating content are less interested in creating music, firstly. You know what I mean? And so the trick is, if we need to create content to promote our music, that's obvious. How do we create content that promotes our page while also promoting the thing that we do, which is the music? There's a few examples that I've seen out there that have done it really efficiently. I think part of it comes down to creating content for your community, being able to build a story through your content, and with everything that you're doing, trying to highlight that the music is what you're trying to get across.
Yeah, key point, because I think, and I was trying to pull up the article as you're talking about, Jason. I don't know if you can touch on it, but there was one of the execs, and I'll post it in the links, but I think it was from Twitter. Are you familiar with the term? They call it the black box algorithm.
I don't think so.
So basically, he was saying what we're seeing with any type of algorithm where the majority, and we may have to have a part 2 chat once we delve into his quote and article, but black box algorithm refers to, you can't see what that algorithm is. It's unbeknownst to the user. And he said that's the majority of what's happening, because everyone can say, yeah, just keep posting and the algorithm will tweak it. But black box, meaning it's unattainable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, once you start chasing the algorithm, you will always be chasing the algorithm, because how can you capture lightning in a bottle twice if you don't know how you did it the first time? You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and that was the other thing I was going to mention is a big problem with the concept of being a content creator to promote your music is that on these platforms, TikTok and Instagram primarily, um, your audience is a forever revolving door. You have people who maybe like and share your post the first time, but especially if that post isn't having to do specifically with the music, they're not going to be interested in your music. You know what I mean? Or they may not be interested in the next song that you put out. They're falling in love with the piece of content that they find that you put out. They're not falling in love with you as an artist. That's the problem. That's why you see record labels not wanting to put any money behind the follow-up single to some of these viral artists out there.
Right.
It's because they know that it's like being a one-hit wonder where the audience falls in love with the song instead of the artist, right? Your audience just keeps turning over.
You hit the nail on the head, because I think the one-hit wonder phenomenon, and what we're seeing more than ever with current sort of Gen Z, if you will, and I only pick them because I think sort of their affinity for content of, instant gratification and to thread it, and this actually happened organically, and I'll play the cut in a minute, but one of our label partners, Serato Records, in 98 had released a UK garage track called Friendly Pressure Into the Sunshine by Julissa. And garage house, about 115, 120 BPM, amazing vocals, energy. And that song went viral. I think it's probably up now to 50 million views on TikTok. I'll pull up the numbers, but essentially folks with the summer buzz doing reels to this song by Julissa happened organically and came out in 98. So UK Garage making a second incarnation in the scene. But again, like you said, today it's UK Garage. Tomorrow it could be on to the next.
No, 100%. 100%. Yeah, and if it all comes back to how are you building your community? How are you reinforcing maybe a community that you're stepping into that already exists? You know what I mean? Because if you're just chasing whatever the current trend is, that's all you're going to be doing.
Chase, and that's a great segue, because I think you being a student of the industry and also coming from Belmont Music School, and what are your approach on your current release, and what's the title of it, and what's your approach with release? You're putting out a single once a month?
Yeah. So we put out 3 singles leading up to this next release. The next release is going to be an EP that has three new singles on top of that, so 6 songs total. And our primary method of marketing on this one has just mostly been through meta ads. Meta ads basically to send people to the DSPs that are highly likely to want to listen to our track and save it to their playlist and or follow us on that platform. That increases the algorithm's awareness on that DSP of who likes our track, right? We're feeding that algorithm data. And so by doing that, it'll
go.